Welcome to the Property Nomads podcast, and this episode is with Aaron Devoy. Aaron is the other property nomad. We waited a while to do this. We've been working on so much behind the scenes. Aaron and I have known each other for a very, very long time, well over a decade, and we touch upon that finally in this episode. For those that have been listening with us from the beginning, the values of the company are still the same. Authenticity, integrity, congruence, travel, prosperity, network. Everything is the same. We've been working very hard, Aaron and myself, behind the scenes to be able to find a way to infuse everything together. That's the Property Nomads podcast and our buying company, which is Devoy Smallbone Properties. And it's a very, very, very soft relaunch with this episode. So the values are still the same. The personnel is slightly different. It's now Aaron Devoy and myself, Rob Smallbone. We are the Property Nomads. We're going to be talking a little bit here about why you should start a business with your friend, how it's worked out for us, the lessons that we've learned from having done a lot of traveling and how that's affected our business decision making, and a bit more about Aaron's history as well. Moving forward, you might not hear too much from Aaron on the podcast, but it's always important to put a face to the name. So thank you for sticking with us. This is Property Nomads podcast. Enjoy episode 136 with the new property nomad, Aaron Devoy. So really looking forward to this episode. So finally introducing Aaron Devoy to the team. We were speaking about this off camera and saying that not co-host as such, because it's rare that Aaron's going to be sort of doing a ridiculous amount of podcasts, but might do the odd one here and there. But it's been a long time coming, and things go full circle. And Aaron, good to. It's not going to be an interview sort of thing. It's a sort of a generic chat, but welcome to the show. Breaking your virginity.
Thank you very much. Yes, unfortunately, it's not my first podcast, but it's the first podcast of TPN, so it would be an interesting chat, I think, today.
No, definitely. And this is, I suppose, let's get some background on this. The reason behind this is that there's going to be a lot of social medias moving forward. So, do follow us, Facebook, Instagram, that sort of stuff. You're going to start seeing Throwback Thursday, which is going to have a lot of photos of you and I from, we've known each other nearly 15 years at the time of recording, goes all the way back to university. And, there's going to be, the whole point of the Throwback Thursday is looking at, reminiscing over good times. Obviously, these are weird times at the moment, people not traveling around as much. And, we wanted to dive into the archives, start sharing our story a bit more. And then, as we said before, in a few years' time, when everything's back to normal, then start going out and about and doing a lot of traveling. So we've done a lot of traveling. We're writing a book about some of our travels as well, and that's just Throwback Thursday. We're also going to be doing loads of book recommendations. Books that you and I that we've read and that we've enjoyed. And we thought, well, hey, why not? Might as well do a podcast together and put a face to the name and the voice and so forth. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people realise that we've known each other now since our fresher years of 2006 at Brighton University, doing our business degree together. And, how we were both very different then, dressed as, quite colourful character dresses. We won't share any of those overly outrageous outfits to cover the fact that we weren't very confident students hiding at the back.
The less said about that, the better. Hopefully there's no photos in the archives of that. We definitely won't be putting them online.
No, we definitely won't. We don't want to show people your outrageous hairstyles of the time. I know it was the noughties, but blimey.
Pink Mohicans and, everything, leopard print on my hair. Only in Brighton. I love Brighton for that. It's absolutely fantastic. I suppose that's going back to university. We're talking sort of 15 years ago. I think the other nail to hit on the head to start off with is that what people might see with various social media handles and through the podcast is people might see the logo for Devoy Smallbone Properties. So we have to make clear that yes, Property Nomads podcast is a podcast entity, but we also co-own the Devoy Smallbone Properties, which is effectively just our buying company. So don't be surprised if people do see joint branding at some point. It's still you and I. It's the same people, except one's a buying company, the other one's a podcast.
Yes, as you say, I think it's something also that people aren't, isn't openly apparent to everybody. But yeah, since 2016, we've had our property company in the background where we have our buy-to-let portfolios and our HMOs. And, I think from our time at uni when we did start traveling together, and I think on our longest adventure in South America is where we actually thought up the idea of our property company, where we were enjoying a year off of, fun and debauchery. And I think, that's where the idea expanded, and, we've now come to the point of obviously, we're merging together on the podcast side of things as well as actually, being business partners in the property sector.
Yeah, and it's all, as you say, it's going to go complete full circle. And, these are, strange times. I think we were talking off there briefly about, Premier League proposal. We won't go into that, but, it was interesting to see that the sort of capitalist ideology versus a socialist ideology. I just thought that was fascinating. The chat we had, I'd recommend actually listening to the Guardian Football Weekly for your in-depth knowledge on that. But and I just love the fact that it's all finally come full circle. We start sowing the seeds now, and eventually over time, we will turn it into a travel podcast. But it's not going to put ourselves at risk unnecessarily to do unnecessary travel just for the sake of reporting back. For now, it seems a bit daft to do that. So property will key thing on that is people always say, what's your why are you doing this, why are you doing that, why are you starting in bricks and mortar or any business, and that's our reason. As you say, we were in I always go back to Bolivia. Actually, I think I remember being in Sucre, and I think we're having a morning beer or something along those lines, and we were getting ready for some football that day, and I think we were just, all the long bus journeys, we just kept talking, and I think from my memory it was Bolivia, and we said actually we should look at bricks and mortar. I mean, is that story work for you, or do you remember it differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we've been friends for an awful long time, and that's been on a foundation of we're both the love of the game of football and also traveling. I think, on which people, as you touched on, will start seeing some of those early adventures in probably as early as 2007 in Throwback Thursday. So that's going to cover us on a holiday, but also we've been to probably an awful lot of football matches together now in, probably 4 or 5 continents all over the world. And I think, where we were fortunate enough to be able to take a year out from work. I think we realised that we wanted to do something for ourselves, and I think as you said, on the bus journey, it's been back and forth of what we could do. And I also think I don't remember it exactly being Sucre, but I do remember sort of towards kind of the end of our time in South America before we moved to Central America. So we've been around Bolivia for sure. The sort of foundations, property pun there, started sort of making sense with the skills that we have as individuals that quite often complement each other throughout the sort of last 4 years that we've been in business together for.
I think a key lesson from that as well is getting started, getting involved. A lot of people do say that sometimes never work with your family and sometimes never work with your friends. So I'm not going to sort of sit here and go, oh, everything's been 100% perfect and we're the dog's bollocks. I think it's been there's been some interesting sort of boundary shifts, but again, they've all come from mainly myself making a few mistakes here and there. But I think that's been quite an entertaining challenge for both of us to sort of have, having known each other for so long as friends, messing around, watching football, doing this, doing that, to then sort of shift to business mentality. And, things are slightly different, aren't they? But we try and keep things as similar as possible for consistency. But I think that challenge has been entertaining. But what are your thoughts on how we've progressed and gone from friendship to business and blended the both?
No, definitely. I agree. I think along the way, if you're not challenging each other, then, it's not necessary. You're probably not offering each other everything that you could as business partners. If everything was, oh, yes, Rob, I think that's great, Rob, or, you agreed with everything I said, then, I think, this wrong decisions would be made. And yes, everybody makes mistakes. You've alluded to yours. I've made mistakes along in our journey, but I don't think people should be fearful of making mistakes. I think that, you've got to, I know everyone says learn from your mistakes, but I think what we tend to do with our mistakes is we look at the process that led us to the decision that's been wrong and change, how we got to that decision. And I think with our skill sets, they're very different. It's almost like, you're front of house, I'm back of house, if you like. So it's, and I think, if you're not challenging each other to the point where everything is just, yes, sir, or no, sir, then I don't think that necessarily your business relationship is, maximizing what you're able to contribute from both sides.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? It's still things that we work on every day. It's trying to, because of, as you say, we work completely differently. So some things work for one person, some things work better for the other. And as you said, the mentality is so important. So even if you're, hey, you might be listening to this and you've already started, business with your best mate and something like that, or you might be thinking about it. And of course, go ahead and do it. And again, just work together and no holds barred to an extent. And I think that sort of level of openness is quite crucial to get to achieve success.
100%. I think if you, weirdly, if you can't argue or, confront each other on, even, sometimes difficult issues for people that have known each other, for 14, 15 years time, then, you're really not, probably not in the sort of right space for your business relationship after so many years. If, you can't say something to each other that, isn't going to be easy or, or upset the other person, and I think that's something that probably better than most we can deal with, where we have experienced, a lot of highs and lows as friends and business partners for, well over, 14 years now. I think it puts us in that position where we can openly challenge each other on almost everything that we do, even though we have very different roles and responsibilities within the business. We're both not afraid to, cross over that boundary, if you like, to talk about, what we could change on that side or this side. So I think that's, a real key lesson for anybody that's looking at a business partnership.
Do you think that because something I think about sometimes, hindsight's a wonderful thing, that the amount of travel that we've done, so, 4 years at university, both went off and done, a little bit of work, then went to Southeast Asia and the USA. So we started in Hong Kong, didn't we? Went overland to Bangkok and then flew. Well, we'll go into that in a bit. Don't fly against a damn dateline. But anyway, flew to Los Angeles and then went overland to New York. And I mean, that whole process, that journey took about 3 months. And then we came back. We didn't know any better at the time. So, we've both went back to work. If I'll get my words out, we both went back to work. And then, we sort of done it traditionally, didn't we? Saved up. We knew we wanted to go to the World Cup, and we touch upon that in the book that we're writing, the memoirs of South America and Central America. So we had a plan, which was cool, then executed that plan. The travelling was, wild stories from that part of the world, which is great. And then because of that mental shift and finding out that, hey, bricks and mortar actually could, we want to travel, we want to utilise property to travel. And then we started going down that route, and we've learned a lot. That's a long-winded way of saying, do you think all the travelling has helped us to make the decision to go into business? Because without going into every single story, there's some, there's some fun stories from Asia and from Latin America where I think we've seen the best and worst of each other, sometimes unexpectedly. But would you say that that's helped us as friends and as business partners?
Yeah, I think probably firstly on the stories, our mums might be listening, so we're probably not going to share all of them. I think the traveling has probably been, almost kind of, the development of us as friends and as business partners. When you're friends that travel together and when you're business partners, you figuratively live in each other's pockets. So, when particularly, in America and Asia, where you spend so much time on a bus, I think you kind of, you learn a lot about, that, with the person that you're sharing those experiences with, whether they're, up or down, and we've been very fortunate on both personally and business wise to, share a lot of experiences that people would be, quite jealous of. So I think I think they're, the point when we've been traveling together, we've learned that we can cope with each other and deal with, the best and worst of our personalities. And I think that's definitely crossed over into our business relationship for sure.
Okay, so deep diving into some travel then. Let's go through some, mentioned, some places that, we've been to that people would be, very jealous of. I think it's the other thing's important to point out that when we done the bigger journey in 2014, 2015, that we'd done that I say that's through hard work. We didn't know any better at the time. This wasn't, we had loads of property and, we were traveling around the world because we were financially free. This was, we'd worked for 2 and a bit years. We had a goal, we saved, because, that's what we knew at the time. But, I'm guessing at the top of your head is going to be the Galapagos.
Yeah, well, I think even before you kind of get to the travel, I think it probably, helps people understand, how we got to this point. As you say, we didn't do our traveling, once we got financially free. We were both very fortunate that, we worked hard beforehand. We left university in the middle of a recession. So probably not the best time to leave, but we both did it. We went out and got a job. So, I started my route in financial services, which ended up working, for an accounting company. And then we went traveling. We probably combined the two worst places, Asia and America, together. But yeah, Asia was, it's an amazing part of the world. And I think that where we went all the way back in 2011 now, we probably experienced it in a way that modern people can't now, because I think, even in sort of the 9 years since that we've been, it's become a lot more commonly, experienced route now, going through Asia on the buses. And, when you tell even Americans that we traveled from Los Angeles to New York by Greyhound, we've had some interesting responses that we normally got a number of expletives in. So it's, and that was just in America. And like you say, we came back and then we went back to, work again. And, from leaving that, I, went into, the world of investing and kind of ended up, sort of in the risk and compliance roles, both of which contribute, to how I think we run our business today.
You went on the side for podcast purposes. I'm laughing away. She just reminded me of a story about the really big woman he sat next to on one of the journeys. We'll go into that at some point, maybe in a future episode.
I think that's. Read it in the book, guys. I'm not going to share that online.
Fun times. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Greyhound is, I think, it's a sort of national coach company, should we say, of the United States. And when you say to people that you've travelled from one to the other across, Atlantic to Pacific or vice versa, people give you the weirdest look, don't they? And go, what the, how the hell have you done that? Because it's sort of considered a lower class of travelling.
And still be alive.
But yeah, don't go to Flagstaff, Arizona, because that place sucks. Horrific.
No, I agree on that one.
Horrific place. But yeah, as you say, we're working on at the moment is 15 countries, 10 months. And that literally documents, to the best of our memory, 6 years ago, from going to Rio de Janeiro for Brazil 2014, for the World Cup. So that was why we headed out there anyway. And then we sort of documented everything from going, we basically done a fish hook, didn't we? We started in Rio, there for the World Cup, sort of went down, across into Paraguay, then Uruguay, then, Argentina, up, Chile, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, so forth, and then jumped over to Panama to then go through Central America. So we actually started to document a lot of that into a book. So I don't know when that's going to sort of be out. So that's a lot of work. So we want to make sure it's not just a sort of a random diary. We want to make sure that it's
family friendly.
Well, most of it is, from what I've seen so far. So yeah, but we're working on that. We'll keep you updated on that. And that's just going to be a very sort of interesting story. I do think going back to I say that on Throwback Thursday, there's a couple of old school posts from about 10 years ago. So that will give you a good idea of some fun travel times. I don't think we'll end up writing about that because I'm pretty much drunk for most of it, to be fair. That was but I enjoyed being 2021. It was good fun.
Well, I remember.
yeah. There's definitely some stories there, falling out of minibuses and directing a Vietnamese bike driver back to the hotel in Italian, and to my mind, he understood what I was saying, and we got back there in one piece. But it was a bit hazy.
Whilst you were laying open my lap.
Yeah, see, drunk times from Asia. But that's fun. I think all of that's sort of all of that's helped. This isn't an episode to deep dive into every story, and that might get a bit boring. Fundamentally, the whole thing of this is to obviously introductions, all that sort of stuff. But you mentioned briefly about risk and compliance management. So again, for the benefit, I know sort of what that's about, but for people that might not understand that, can you just go a bit more in depth about that, how that works and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so well, you said, I think quite an important part of our journey, and where we've touched on skill sets, kind of my sort of background and how we then now work as a business is, quite fundamental to our setup. So as after leaving university, I went into accountancy. I ended up being a senior account manager at a large accountancy firm in Brighton. Much to my family's disgust, I think at the time I left there to go on holiday for a year, when me and Rob started looking at founding, the idea of what we wanted to do together, and ultimately it became property. So when I came back from there, I then sort of entered into sort of the sort of finance, brokerage and wealth management industry, and where I actually worked my way up from being in customer services all the way up to being the risk and compliance manager. And it's in sort of a regulated environment. It's probably one of the most important roles of in a company. You're there basically responsible for making sure that all of the regulatory requirements from governing bodies and your company's ticking all of the right boxes, and acting as they should. And a large part of my job was actually evaluating the viability of the investment options. So it's something that I do for us now, so that's looking at the area background, the developer's background, the investor's background, and actually making sure that, that what is being sold on paper is actually what is there, and it's actually as safe as it's being portrayed. And you often feel like you're investigating people, and you can rub them the wrong way because you have to ask tough questions. And I think, like I alluded to, it's kind of the setup that we have now. So with my finance background and my due diligence background, I take care of the running, if you like, of the day-to-day stuff of the company. I look after the accounting, systemization, and I do the bulk of the due diligence on the deals that ultimately that we buy and pitch out to our group of investors that who are kindly helping us along the way on our journey. Yeah,
and that's crucial. That's crucial. I mean, if you listen to this and you're experienced in property, or you're new, or you're just getting started, that it's always the same thing. Do your due diligence. You've got to do your homework. You've got to know the numbers. And as I always say, property's a people business. So to have, it takes doing due diligence, doing homework is something that takes time. But it's great that as you say, you've got that extra skill set that's really, really useful. So you've got correct me if I'm wrong, not a degree, but you've actually got a diploma in this as well. So you're talking big, some stuff you've done in the past. You're talking relatively big projects as well. So so I think that's great. It's a great asset we have as Devoy Smallbone Properties Property Nomads podcast.
No, definitely. I mean, I've got a postgraduate diploma in risk and compliance and corporate governance. And, I think, although like you said there, that it was for much, larger projects where it was, for, raising funds through, a large amount of funds through a large group of investors, those skills and traits that I learned on a project of that, we still apply to, our projects, even though it's often one buy-to-let at a time or a very small, group of flats. You can use those bases for the same. And I think it's probably something unique to us where we apply such a detailed process in the background. We're not just looking at numbers and yields. We check an awful lot of the background information that might not necessarily be, obvious or even a requirement to a lot of people. But we're trying to make sure, obviously, not just for our own sake, that it's as safe of investment as possible, but where we're very fortunate to have, a substantial investor group where I think we're now, way over 100, way over £500,000 of private investor funds. They know that we've gone in very in-depth detail, and they're comfortable that when we're presenting them information, it's because it's something that we're happy to share with people, because we're comfortable buying it, with the assistance of their investor funds.
And that process has taken time. It's a lot of people have. I'm sort of not going to bandish everyone out there with the same brush, but we talked about actually at the start of the episode, didn't we, about selling a story. And actually, I think when you're a property virgin, it's very easy to get sort of sucked into different stories, ideologies, strategies, and everything. And hands up to us. Again, we're not perfect. We have taken 4 and a bit years to actually have a very concrete strategy, and a lot of that's been through trial and error. And as you just alluded to there, building up over $500,000 of investor finance is great, because it's pretty much now how well can we recycle that, because we've built up such a good rapport with the investors that project happens, project finishes, investor paid back, and then, strike while the iron's hot, as they say. New project. Oh, yeah, by the way, this is X, Y, Z, and having the skill set that you have with the extra, I'm just going to call it the extra homework. Again, this is just, we appreciate not every business is going to have this, but, the key thing is you're doing your homework, doing due diligence, and where we are now has taken years and years and years of, learning time and making mistakes. It's not just happened overnight and happy days, has it?
No, definitely, I agree. I mean, I think property is one of those unique industries where it's very hard to be blinkered. Once people kind of know you're in that sector and you're interested, you get apps, different options, JVs, HMOs, rent, buy to lease options or rent to lease options. And I think, we've suffered the same fate, with the coiny, the shiny coin syndrome, that, you think that you're on the right path, and then someone throws this massive cash carrot at you, and then you wander down there, and then all of a sudden you find yourself that you're trying to do 4 or 5 different strategies at once. And I think what has been a big challenge for us is, although we started in 2016 and you worked full-time from the company from the start, I've only been working full-time for the company since February 2020. So, a lot of the decisions were probably being made at the wrong time, because, I'd probably been to work, done my 9-10 hour day. And then we were, still trying to run a business in the evening. And I think, over those, as you've rightly said, over those 4 years, we've probably suffered as much as anybody, experimenting and getting it wrong. And I think, you've got to face up to when you've made a mistake. And, and I don't say learn from that mistake, but figure out, what process led you to making that decision that was wrong. I think that's what we're particularly very good at. And I think over the, nearly 5 years now that we've been doing it, we've kind of now realized, what we actually want to specialize in, and having focus. I mean, even though we've been on training courses and had mentors, and they all say that, I think at the end of the day, when you're so distracted by everyone dangling all these potentially huge cash returns at you, it's hard to remain focused. And I think, actually sticking to one particular strategy is probably the hardest thing in property out of all of the things, because there's so many different things and unique things that you can do. But I think we finally found our little niche, and won't give away too many of our secrets for free. But I think, being open and being able to discuss the process that led us to make decisions that were wrong is probably the biggest thing that we do, rather than learn from our mistakes. Because, if you don't think you're going to make a mistake, then you're lying. Basically, we're human after all. We're going to make mistakes in everything that we do. But I think we're very good at figuring out what led us to make the mistake or the bad decision, rather than sort of taking away a learning every time. Sometimes you make a mistake and there's naff all to learn. You've made a mistake.
And every day is about getting better, isn't it? You've got to have, as you point out, you've got to have that mentality. You've got to look at those systems and processes. We're working sort of very diligently in the background as well, and also working out. I know it might sound wishy-washy, but it's so important, knowing what your values are, knowing what, your personal values are, knowing what, where you want to be, how you want to live your life. And, I think those sort of things where people don't necessarily put a lot of time into it, having answers to those questions, can really help. You as an individual, not necessarily you, Aaron, but, people listening as individuals, but also as a business, if someone wants something wildly different from another, that could create a challenge if that's not being communicated. So, these sort of, wishy-washy things, they aren't really wishy-washy. They're very practical and can help change, Yeah, I mean, they can help change the way you do things and business strategy. And that's, of course, when you're dealing with properties, it's fundamental because it can be quite cyclical.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, although it's only, a new thing for us where we've recently brought on, 2 employees, it's the most obvious piece of advice that you ever get, from people that have been there and done it before. Pay somebody to do the things that you don't want to do. We're no longer spending, the best part of our days doing admin. Obviously we've got, an amazing portfolio manager that kind of takes care of those sort of, the paper shuffling side of that for us. And it allows us to focus on, the bigger picture and, the hard decision making of the business these days.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, they're the key things. It's, I know that our mentor, Rob Moore, we've done a podcast recently and he was mentioning about, how many hours do you need to work a week and, get people to do the things you don't like. And the one way that you find out how you find things that you don't like doing is by doing them, oddly. So, loads of admin is a good example. And, if you don't like doing it, we'll give it to someone else. Okay, yeah, there is... the challenge that people have, I think, when they're looking at that is that, and at the start we were doing the same. You look at it and go, what's the cost of it? It's like, well, that's not the right way to look at it. It's, well, what's the investment? So if I'm paying someone, £5 an hour, but they're taking all my admin away, then happy days, you're going to free up a lot more time because time really is more valuable. The caveat I would have with that I like with that, is that in order to get things up and running how you would like them to get them up and running, is that can ironically take time to educate and train someone. But a lot of time at the start, but over time it will work its way out, sort itself out. And I think there's a beauty to that as well. So think about those little words. That's important too. Not what the cost of something is, what's the investment, and it's these little mental tweaks that I think we work on every day. But certainly, we've had challenges when we first started, and they're so true. Having been able to sit back and look back on them.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that we can say about ourselves is we never ask anybody that works for us to do something that we haven't done before. We for an awful long time we tried to manage somehow the company between you working full time and then me working part time in the evenings and weekends. We've all of the tasks that that are now passed on to somebody that does that for us. We've done it. I wouldn't expect anybody to spend any time, no matter how much they're getting paid, doing something that I wasn't prepared to do for our own business. And I think that's advantage for us, where we've been able to do that, work out what works. And then, before we've passed that on to somebody else, there is a process and, an end result of what we want to see from that process.
Yeah, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Totally. So we said at the start of the episode, it's not always about agreeing, and all we've done in the last 20 minutes is agree with each other. So I love the irony. I love the irony of that. But yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap up. I think, it's great to obviously get you on the show and say we'll be very clear. You're not going to be, co-hosting this. You're not, you're happy for me to crack on and do that. So people, you have to deal with my wildness on the podcast moving forward. But I think having that introduction has been very, very useful, and also just key to go over some points. If you're looking to get into business with a good mate or anything like that, don't be afraid of it. There's always you're going to work out your challenges. Just go in with the right mentality, go in and learn, and realize that, mistakes will be made, and you've got to figure out all of those challenges and work on that. That's crucial. And also looking forward to all the sort of social media activity that, again, we'll always get better every day. Look out for Throwback Thursday. We're going to be dipping into the archives. There's a lot of, having had a look through them, there's some random ones in there, some good stuff in there. So that's going to be a little bit of fun for your Thursday, especially with the current climate that we're in. We're also going to be doing a book recommendation each week. It's not a book review. We've not gone in depth and have gone, written a masterpiece on each book. It's just these are books that have helped us. There's a big variety of books there. They're not all property books. There are various ones, but travel, philosophy, mindset stuff as well. So again, look out for that on all the social medias. Working on that book as well, 15 countries, 10 months. So again, look out for that. And there are other things that are in the background that we can't say anything about, that maybe leave till 2021, 2022, and stay in touch. Keep in touch with us on that. As you may know, you probably don't know, I'm not overly too active myself personally on social media, but Aaron, you're a bit more active than I am. So if people want to connect with you, find out more about you, so you've mentioned a lot, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, as the TPN Property Podcast is on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook. You individually are on Facebook. If they want to connect with me, they have to find me on LinkedIn. But between those kind of cross on everything, then we're slowly exploring the options, and we've now got a social media manager that helps us with those kind of things. But yeah, if you want to connect with me directly, then it's on LinkedIn or via Instagram with the TPM podcast.
Lovely, perfect stuff. As usual, all of that will be in the show notes, and we're always looking for feedback on the show as well. As we mentioned, we've got Smallbone to Pick, which is a new sort of series. They'll be on and off. That's just me ranting completely off on one, because that makes me feel better about all the crap going on in and around the world. We've restarted the quick cast as well, so very short, sharp, informative content in general, and then sticking with the longer format stuff on Mondays as well. So if you like the podcast, do continue to listen, do share with other people. It's always really, really useful. Any feedback, anything you want to hear, as usual, email myself, rob at tpnpodcast.com. We always love feedback. Leaving a review on iTunes as well is highly appreciated. But until next time, Aaron, just a massive thanks for your time. Welcome. Nice to get this formal sort of introduction done. And thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Until next time, people, auf Wiedersehen.
Thank you very much.